The Azov sniper unit, now a core component of the 1st Corps of the Ukrainian National Guard, was on full alert. With long-range surveillance and precise coordination, the Russian troops' movements were identified before they reached their targets. Once they entered the danger zone, swift and precise action was taken. Several Russian troops were reportedly neutralized, while the remainder were forced to abandon their infiltration attempts and withdraw from the area. Pocrowsk sector, another attempt by Russian troops to infiltrate Ukrainian territory, ended tragically. In a covert operation on the Donetsk front line, a sniper team from Ukraine's Azov Brigade reportedly intercepted and neutralized several Russian personnel attempting to infiltrate Ukrainian defense positions. According to Ukrainian military reports, the Russian group moved stealthily, exploiting open terrain and gaps in defenses to approach heavily fortified areas around the Pocrowsk sector. Their mission was allegedly aimed at testing defenses and opening a path for further movement. However, their stealthy actions were observed. In a different battle sector, aerial footage captured a gripping moment. A Russian soldier was seen running across an open area, his movements gradually slowing down. The soldier appeared, resigned, and was running from a Ukrainian Azov drone. The Ukrainian Azov drone continued to monitor from above, keeping its distance but not losing sight of its target. Within seconds, the Russian troops' escape attempt turned into a tense struggle for survival. Without adequate cover and with exposed terrain, their progress became increasingly disjointed. This footage highlights how the dominance of aerial surveillance has transformed the battlefield, not just about heavy weapons, but about who sees and reacts first. The events in this sector provide a stark illustration of how on the Ukrainian front lines, even when major battles are silent, the threat remains looming from the skies, and every movement can determine fate in a matter of seconds. This is just the opening video. Soon we will delve deeper into how the Ukrainian Azov troops defend their territory from the front lines. In the shadow of artillery blasts and large-scale open battles, there's one face of the war in Ukraine that often goes unnoticed: the war of infiltration. Along the Donetsk front and surrounding sectors, conflicts don't always begin with the boom of cannons or the roar of fighter jets. Instead, many battles begin with small, barely audible steps, silent, calculated movements designed to test and pressure the enemy without triggering a major escalation. For Russian forces, infiltration is one way to maintain the initiative in an increasingly complex battlefield. When frontal assaults prove costly and risky, a stealthy approach is seen as offering new opportunities. However, the reality on the ground shows that this tactic now faces significant challenges, particularly due to Ukraine's dominance of aerial surveillance, which is slowly changing the way the war is waged. In terrain like Donetsk, relatively static and filled with multiple defense lines, large-scale attacks often result in significant losses without significant gains. Minefields, trenches, and constantly active surveillance systems make every forward push a high-stakes affair. It's in situations like these that infiltration is chosen as an alternative. To test the enemy's readiness, find the slightest opening, disrupt psychological and logistical stability, and gather information directly from the front lines. The hope is simple: to create constant pressure without sacrificing large units at once. However, the methods Russia uses to carry out infiltration reveal an interesting and sometimes contradictory dynamic in how they adapt to the ever-changing battlefield. One method most frequently seen in recent months is the use of motorcycles. From a tactical perspective, this choice seems logical. Motorcycles allow for fast and flexible movement, are able to navigate narrow paths, and have a smaller footprint than armored vehicles. With motorcycles, small units can move quickly, infiltrate specific areas, and then disperse before a major response is launched. However, this logic begins to break down when faced with the realities of the modern battlefield. In Ukraine, speed is no longer synonymous with safety. Surveillance drones with high-resolution cameras and thermal sensors can detect even the slightest movement from long distances. In the sky, there is no longer the concept of too fast to see. In open areas, motorcycles often become a means of expediting detection. Once detected, escape routes narrow drastically. and vehicles once considered advantageous actually leave their occupants exposed without adequate protection. Even more surprising are the reports of the use of horses in some infiltration attempts. At first glance, this seems anomalous, a description more suited to past conflicts than 21st century warfare. But behind the oddity lies a logic that isn't entirely flawed. Horses make no engine noise, are able to navigate narrow terrain, forests, and muddy paths, and leave a smaller heat signature than motorized vehicles. On paper, horses seem to offer a way to evade detection by modern technology. In practice, however, this choice reflects the immense pressures facing Russian forces. When motorized vehicles are difficult to use due to logistical constraints, high risk, or breakdowns, horses emerge as a last resort. In this context, the use of horses is not a symbol of tactical ingenuity, but rather a sign of limitations. In the face of drones capable of monitoring vast areas for hours on end, silence and simplicity are no longer enough to guarantee safety. Unlike motorcycles and horses, the use of armored vehicles signals a much more aggressive approach. This method typically emerges when Russia is trying to push the front line, secure key positions, or provide direct support for infantry movements. Armored vehicles convey a clear message that this is not just an infiltration, but part of a strategic push. However, this is precisely why the risks are so high. Large vehicles are easily detected, especially in sectors long under intense Ukrainian surveillance. Once spotted, armored vehicles quickly become priority targets, not only for ground units, but also for armed drones and other precision weapons systems. What is intended as protection often turns into a liability. Regardless of the method used, motorcycles, horses, or armor, one striking similarity persists. All movement is monitored. The key to this situation lies in Ukraine's dominance of aerial surveillance, particularly by units integrated with the Azov forces, which now form a major part of the First Corps of the Ukrainian National Guard. Ukrainian drones are not simply passive reconnaissance tools. They serve as early warning systems, guiding ground unit maneuvers, and connecting intelligence and direct action. Once movement is detected, information is transmitted in real time to the relevant units on the ground. This is where the Azov sniper teams play a crucial role. They do not move randomly or reactively, but rather based on precise observation data. With pre-arranged positions, snipers are the final link in the defense chain. Many infiltration attempts are halted before they even reach the main Ukrainian defense line, not by major engagements, but by a combination of observation, coordination, and precision. All of this underscores one crucial reality. The Ukrainian battlefield has fundamentally changed. Conflict is no longer determined by how fast one moves, how quietly one approaches, or how thick one's armor is. What matters most now is who controls the skies, data, and long-range surveillance capabilities. In these conditions, the concept of safe passage is almost irrelevant. Every movement leaves a trace, be it visual, thermal, or pattern that can be captured, analyzed, and acted upon. Ultimately, Russian troop infiltration attempts, in all their variations, reflect both the adaptation and the pressure they face on the Ukrainian battlefield. But under the watchful eye of Azov drones and snipers, these adaptations often lead to failure. Motorcycles, horses, and armored vehicles face the same reality. On the modern Ukrainian battlefield, there is no such thing as complete cover. As long as Ukrainian air surveillance remains dominant, every step forward will be monitored, measured, and ultimately stopped before it reaches its destination.